Hello there, I'm physiotherapist Kim Siddons, and today I'm going to talk to you about a crick neck or a wry neck, as we might otherwise call it. And there's a bit of a funny story behind this because I recently had a crick neck or a wry neck after whipping my head around while I was doing an upside down hairdo, getting ready for an 80s costume party. And as I whipped my head back up from having it upside down, blow drying to get it all buffy and big, I got a wry neck. My neck just went seized up, immediate pain, immediate spasm and stiffness, couldn't move, and I was stuck. I've treated lots of people for this similar type of injury over the years, and I know it happens. I know a lot of people will even tell me, yes, I tend to get it once or twice a year or even more times a year. And it's something that a lot of people suffer quite badly from. So I thought, well, let's do a little bit of training on it. It's a good reminder to me. I'm not perfect. Obviously, hadn't been looking after my neck myself, and I ended up with crick neck. So we're going to go through a little bit about what it is, why it happens, what we can do when it happens, and how to avoid it coming back or prevent it recurring, because that can be one of the biggest issues if you've had a crick neck or a wry neck. So what is a crick neck? Well, basically it's when you get sudden spasm, sudden loss of movement and stiffness so that you're unable to turn your neck properly. I'm sure most people have had even minor episodes where they've had a sharp pain in their neck and then they can't turn their neck very well and they go around for a few days walking like a robot. Now, there are different structures in your neck, and depending which of those structures are more involved in your particular case of wry neck or stiff or sore neck, that will determine how your progression of the injury plays out. So we're going to talk a little bit more about those structures now and how it determines what you then do about it. So I've got the spine here today, my little picture in the background, so I can talk you through a couple of those reasons and give you a few clues as to what then you might be able to notice in yourself as warning signs and prevent it coming on in the future. So this is our spine, and each vertebra is stacked one on top of the other. And if you look at this, the vertebra side on the sides are little joints, little wing joints on the side of the vertebra. If you look at it this way, the wing joints are one on top of each other. So this is from side on. So those little wing joints on the side need to be aligned nicely, and they need to move together nice and fluidly so that we can turn our necks from side to side. And when one of those little joints, where it stacks up with the one on top of it, when one of those joints gets suddenly blocked because of a sudden movement or sudden muscle spasm, we're unable to turn. And that tends to be a wry neck that would resolve mostly, not always, but mostly on its own accord within a week, or at the outset maybe 2 weeks. So you'd notice probably that you get sudden pain, sudden stiffness, soreness, muscle spasm, inability to move more to one side than the other usually, sometimes a little bit of trouble sleeping, sometimes a bit of a headache. And that is usually because one of those little joints on the side has jammed up when it's turning and suddenly locked up, muscle spasm on top, compression, and you feel pain. So that's sort of more of a joint related wry neck. There is, however, another important structure in the neck, you've probably heard of it, a disc. The discs, they don't exactly look like that, but that's a bit of a diagram that shows a bit about what it looks like. And the discs sit between the vertebra, and they're our shock absorbers. So they're responsible for maintaining a healthy space between each of the vertebrae stacked on one another and keeping those joints moving nice and fluidly and shock absorbing load through our body. So if you have a bit of background stiffness, maybe even a bit of wear and tear in your neck, and you do something suddenly, sometimes that will load up your disc to great an extent, and the disc will be involved instead, or as well as the joint. When the disc is involved, it's more of a ligamentous type structure and it doesn't have such a good blood supply, and that can end up causing a slightly more severe case of Rhineck, and it's because the disc is involved, and so you get a bit more inflammation. The disc can even exude inflammatory fluid into the area around. We call them into these little nerve root areas as the nerve exits the spine, so it can cause more serious side effects and symptoms such as pins and needles, numbness. If it's quite severe, you might feel like you've got a very heavy head and you can't even support the weight of your head properly. And perhaps you're actually feeling quite distressed, lots of difficulty sleeping, lots of pain and stiffness in the morning, and just a different degree, a different severity of symptoms. So if you've got any of those sorts of symptoms, the heavy head, the numbness, the pins and needles, tingling, weakness in your arms, that's a little bit more severe, and you might need to seek some help with that. Of course, I'm a physiotherapist and we're very well trained in assessing, diagnosing and treating those sorts of neck conditions, so I would recommend that you see a physiotherapist. So now we know that your Rhineck can be related to more of a joint issue or more of a disc issue. Let's have a think about the underlying causes that might be related to getting this crick neck or Rhineck in the first place. So many people will tell me that they woke up with it. They woke up in the morning, or they woke up after falling asleep on a plane, falling asleep on the couch, falling asleep in some sort of awkward position or in the car, and their neck was jammed up and they couldn't move, painful, stiff, can't turn to one side more than the other. So falling asleep in awkward positions obviously puts more load on one of those structures, or a combination of load on the area. Your neck is unable to cope with that, and when you go to wake up and when you go to move, the sudden spasm and inflammation sets in. The other type of cause of Rhineck that I see often is like what happened with me when I suddenly whipped my head up and my joint locked up and I got my Rhineck, the pain, the stiffness, couldn't move more to one side than the other. So with the joint type particularly, or the fast movement type of Rhineck, it's because there's too much load, too much sudden load on the joint, and your muscles aren't strong enough and aren't switched on well enough to support your neck as it's sort of moving from one way to the other, and so the joint just locks up, the muscle spasms up. The other reason is often what happens with kids. So recently had a friend contact me and say, my daughter, she's only 9 and she's woken up, she's got a really sore, stiff Rhineck. Well, unable to turn, she didn't say Rhineck. Unable to turn her neck, it's very sore. And so kids are often quite prone to this, particularly in times of growth spurts. So when kids grow, their muscles often don't grow as fast as their bones, and they can have a bit of muscle imbalance happening for a little while. And sometimes kids are a bit prone to waking up and getting Rhinecks, or to do with overload. So that's whether kids or adults, if we're just doing too much of either of a repetitive movement or some sort of sporting movement, a quick, fast movement, any of those sorts of things that would put too much pressure, too much strain on the neck, and we're not able, not because we're too stiff or because we don't have the strength and we don't have the timing of the muscles to come in quick enough to stop the overload on the joint, then we get the sprain, then we get the inflammation, the joint, the pain, the stiffness. So I hope that makes sense for you. Make sure you ask any questions if you've got them. Now moving on to what should we do if we do get a Rhineck. Now I mentioned before, if you've got any of the more serious symptoms, particularly heaviness of head, numbness, tingling, loss of strength in your arms, or dizziness, you can't sleep and it's been going on for a while, or just severity of pain, if you're really struggling and you can't carry out any of your normal activities, you need to go and see someone. Make sure you get it sorted. But if you're actually functioning okay, you're getting to work, you might be a bit limited driving and reversing the car out, but your sort of pain is of a manageable level, then here's a few tips for you. Obviously, you want to try and manage your pain the best way you can. So something that's quite natural to do is to use ice or heat. Now, people always ask me, should I use heat or should I use ice? And really, there's no hard and fast rule, but this is the way I like to think about it. Particularly in the morning when you're feeling really, really stiff and can't move and need to get going, I like to use heat in the morning because we're warming up. We're wanting to get our joints and muscles moving as much as they can. They won't be as capable as normal, but get them moving as much as they can. Later on in the day, particularly if you've been doing some activity and it's starting to hurt more, that's when ice can be really good. Now, we often can't tolerate ice very well around our neck, but you could try either a really small ice pack or a few ice cubes in a little Chuck's rag or something and just put it really locally on the area. Or if you can tolerate it, you could put an ice pack all around your neck and see how you go. So I usually recommend ice more after activity and heat more before activity. Saying that, by the end of the day, if all you want to do is lie down on a heat pack and you prefer that heat more than ice, that's fine too. Your body knows what's best for you a lot of the time. Go with your gut feeling, and if you really just want to lie down with some heat, do that. Same as if it's a really hot day and the thought of a heat pack doesn't make sense to you, try some ice instead. Either can be good just for about 15-20 minutes. You don't want to give yourself a burn, but you can even alternate between the two if you like. That's okay. You can alternate between heat and ice either quickly, one after the other, or just at different times of the day. So that's heat and ice. The other thing you want to do to manage your pain is if you're amenable to taking medication, this is a time when you probably need to do it. So you might like to take Panadol, just even paracetamol regularly throughout the day according to the instructions, as long as you haven't got any other reasons not to take it. Panadol can be really effective. I find anti-inflammatories are probably a little more effective, but that's something that is very specific to you, whether or not you can actually tolerate them very well in your stomach, whether or not you're on other medications. So you need to be very mindful of that. Seek advice from your doctor or your pharmacy if you need to about anti-inflammatories, but they do tend to work a little bit better in this situation. The other thing you can do is try some really gentle exercises. Now, there is one thing you must not do, never do, when you have a really sore neck, particularly a wry neck or sort of disky involvement with your neck. Never try and do the neck roll. The neck roll is actually not great for many of us on many occasions, and I tend to not even ever prescribe it. But particularly never do a neck roll when you have an acutely sore, stiff or limited neck. All right, never do the neck roll. So now you know what not to do. Here's what you can try to do. You can try to rotate your head towards the pain-free side. Never, so assuming it's on my right neck's on this side, I would never want to try and push into pain to try and reef it around. That actually doesn't really help. I know you sort of want to try and sort it out yourself, but pushing into pain doesn't usually help unless you've got a trained professional working through that for you. So the best thing to do is actually just rotate away from the side of pain, or flex your head down away from the, so side flex your neck away from the side of pain. You want to stay within your pain limits, all right? So as long as it's not making the pain worse, you might already have the pain. As long as it's not making the pain worse, just go to where you're comfortable, not into increasing the symptoms, all right? So not towards the pain or towards the restriction, away from the restriction. And the reason that can be really effective is because of those wing joints. So assuming that your little wing joints on the side, those little, they're actually called facet joints or zygapophyseal joints, as long as those ones are restricted, which they usually are in this instance, you want to try and get them moving. So when we rotate and when we side flex, that's a great way to get those little joints moving one on top of the other. And so it just encourages some gentle movement, some gentle gliding. And when you go away from the pain, because they are wing joints, it does affect the other side. So it brings the other one a little bit with it, and as long as you're not forcing into pain or increased symptoms, you get a counter effect on the opposite side. Okay, so definitely move through your reasonably pain-free range of movement. That's number one. The other thing you want to do is make sure that you're being very mindful of your posture. Often you'll be stuck in a posture, forwards, maybe even off to the side. But I want you to try and think about being as tall as you can to take the load off those joints, okay? The more you think about gently being like a puppet on a string and gently taking the pressure off from the back sort of crown area of your head, so this top and just at the back area of your head, thinking about just gently lifting the weight of your head off nice and tall, that actually unloads those vertebrae so that they're not being so squished down that you're actually trying to use your muscles that are around the neck just very gently to unload the neck. Now, we won't go into today the very specific nitty-gritties about neck control exercises, because you won't probably be able to do very much of it when you're acutely sore, or that's sort of beyond, that's another training in itself. But I want you to at least practice relaxing the front of your neck muscles. You can help this to happen by putting your tongue on the roof of your mouth. So you put your tongue on the roof of your mouth, relax the front of your neck muscles as much as you can. Think about then bringing the weight of your head back over your shoulders by bringing your ears back over the shoulders just as much as you can when you've got your sore neck, and then lifting up nice and tall, so that rather than being in this position, that you're as much as you can without making your symptoms worse, you can lift the weight of your head off your neck. That gives the discs and the joints more space and helps that inflammatory process to be cleaned away and helps everything to sort of sort itself out, because rather than putting more load on the structures, you're unloading the structures and allowing them a bit of time to heal up. So that is very important, that you keep correcting yourself, your posture, bringing the weight of your head back over your shoulders and nice and tall. That's a very important one. The other thing you can do, and we're sort of probably heading now into how to address it long term, but you can try this short term, is to start getting your upper back here moving. When I talk to most people who come in with a wry neck, and myself included when I think back to it, the week before, maybe even the 2 weeks before, they can usually tell me that they've been feeling a bit stiff, or they've been under more load at work, more stress, less time to do the exercise they normally would, paying less attention to their posture, not doing stretches, oblivious to the fact usually that they were gearing up for an acute neck pain episode. But they can usually say, oh yeah, I did have a bit of a sore neck last week, even just a little bit of an ache across here, or a little bit of an ache across there. Often it was the same side that's now playing up. And so you sort of think, oh, if we'd have known to take notice of that back then, that would have been awesome. We could have done something about it. And I'm in that boat too. I'm smacking myself on the wrist. So we want to try and keep our upper back and trunk as flexible as we can, so that this area stays nice and loose. Getting stiff at the base of your neck and in your upper back around here is probably one of the greatest risk factors for getting a sore neck. When you're stiff here, you actually can't take your neck into a great position, because you can't correct the posture and take the load off your neck. So you always want to be making sure that you're keeping here nice and flexible. I've given you a few ideas from this before. One of them is putting your hands behind your head, opening up your chest and arching back, particularly when you're sitting in a chair. You can even lean over the back of your chair, a few deep breaths down into your ribs, and opening up those opening up your chest so that your shoulders are flexed, getting some more flexibility across here. And you're also switching on the great muscles down here and increasing the flexibility in your upper back. There's also some self-massage techniques that I've taught in my online course training, where you use trigger balls and back balls and all sorts of things to loosen up the muscles around there. And you can, if you're used to doing that, you can often still loosen up the tops of your shoulders and your upper back area while you've got an acutely wry neck, and it will help to release the muscles as they attach to the base of your neck and your upper back, and that can help. The other thing that a lot of people struggle with when they've got an acute wry neck is sleeping. So I've got a little tip for you, and it's off. A lot of people have had this happen when they're sleeping, and then they have a few sleepless nights after that. If you get a small hand towel, fold it up, roll it up, and pop it in the nape of your neck for sleeping. So your pillow is here, and then this is tucked nice and tight into the curve or the nape of your neck. That can often give your neck just the extra little bit of support that it needs to be able to relax and for you to be able to sleep better at night. You might need to muck around with how thick you make it, either thicker, thinner, or you might even like to try having a less thick version under your neck if you like to sleep on your back, or if you're more comfortable sleeping on your back. But mucking around with a small towel, or even as small as a face washer, and giving your actual neck some support in here where your pillow doesn't often get in tight enough to give you support, that can be a great idea. Then, here's my trusty pillow. You can also, if you're sleeping on your side, grab a extra cushion or pillow and pop your arm over it, so that if you're sleeping on your side, you've got your rolled up towel in the nape of your neck, and then an extra cushion that you're hugging with your top arm, so that you don't tend to roll too far either onto your tummy or get yourself sort of in an awkward position. Having that over the towel helps keep your chest a little bit more open and less likely to be twisted and caving in and putting more strain on your neck. So the rolled towel, hugging the cushion, can be big tips for getting a bit of extra sleep in the few nights after you've just hurt your neck. Now, moving on to what we need to do long term to beat this wry neck, and especially beat the recurring cycle that tends to happen after you've had it once. We need to improve our posture and positioning, we need to improve our flexibility, and we need to improve our strength. So I'll give you a bit of a tip on each of those. Improving your posture, I've done lots of training on this. You can improve your posture at your desk by just correcting how you're sitting. Remember, we put our bottom back, then we lean back on our backrest, then we bring the weight of our head over our shoulders, and we move ourselves in close to our desk. You have to get your positioning right so that you're not sitting or even standing. If you're standing at a bench, at a workbench, or standing around in hospitality or retail, so you're not standing with your shoulders forward and then your neck comes forward. That just puts so much extra strain on your neck. You also need to be mindful of how you're positioning as you're using your dominant arm when you work, so that that shoulder's not coming forward. So your positioning and your posture are usually the biggest risk factors for getting this recurring wry neck. The other thing is obviously the amount of strain that you're putting on it. So in your posture and positioning, if you're sustaining it for long periods, doing lots of repetitive tasks, or say for instance you're under a heap of stress of work, end of the financial year, you're doing heaps and heaps and heaps of hours or longer periods sitting, that's also extra load, extra strain, and you're just a sitting duck for, if it's not an acute wry neck, then neck pain, headaches, all sorts of things that go along with that. So make sure that you're breaking up your positioning and moving your posture, reversing it very regularly, so that you don't get this ongoing cycle of neck pain and stiffness. So now you know how big a deal posture and positioning is in relation to your neck pain, not just your crick neck, but ongoing neck pain. It's really important that you understand how your setup in your work day, in your home life as well, but particularly in your work day, really affects the strain and the load on your neck. And that is all to do with your setup, your ergonomics. So ergonomics is just a fancy name for workstation setup, and it's all about getting the best setup for you to take the most load off your structures and your posture and your body, so that you are most healthy and most productive and in less pain at your workstation. If you haven't had a specific ergonomic assessment just for you in your workstation, then that's super important, because otherwise you're not going to be able to get your posture and positioning exactly right for you and your job. Sometimes even the workstation ergonomic assessments that are provided at your work might not have really considered your pain, your posture, and your particular jobs that you need to do. That's part of the reason why I created my online program that teaches you a whole module, walks you through it step by step on how you need to consider your posture, your job, and your pain and symptoms in your workstation setup. And I guide you through it every step of the way and give you my own expert feedback related to your specific situation. So that's just a little bit behind that part of the online program that I wanted you to know about, because I want you to understand how important it is to get your setup right, so that you're spending most of your time in positions that are taking the most load off your body, rather than spending more time in positions that are straining your body. And sometimes your setup is everything to do with that. If your setup isn't quite right, you can't position yourself, you can't get into the best posture, and you can't take the most strain off your neck, shoulders, and upper back to stop the recurrence of these sorts of neck issues like the crick neck. So, talking about stiffness, improving your flexibility. We've actually talked about one of my favorite ways to reverse your posture and improve your flexibility is your hands behind your head. Adding to that, you can then, after you've done your stretching backwards and open up your chest, you can actually do some side bends to make sure that you're loosening up the sides of your trunk. That's a fantastic thing to do. And you can actually even just shear your trunk off to the sides so that you're making sure you get your upper back moving. Now, for neck stretches, I talked about the thing that you must not do, and I don't ever like to do the old neck roll, to be honest. But the other stretches you can do once the initial symptoms have settled down is the old side neck stretch. That is fine. The best way to do it is not to reef your neck, but to anchor down your shoulder on the one side that you're wanting to stretch. And you can then gently take your head over, but it's not necessary, you don't have to, and I don't want you to force into pain or push into pain or increase symptoms. So if you want to add a little bit of pressure over the top, that's fine. You can do both sides, anchor down the shoulder and over to the other side. Again, making sure that you're not jamming up that wry neck or stiff side of your neck. You want to make sure that you're happy to move towards that and back off if you need to. That's fine. The other stretch that's really good to do is to stretch up the side of your neck by putting your nose down as if you're going to sniff your opposite armpit. So again, you anchor down one shoulder and then take your neck forwards as if you're going to look under your armpit. Your nose really needs to be coming forwards and down and under towards the opposite side. So you can do that on either side. Then you'd anchor the other one and turn your nose and look underneath and add a little bit of extra pressure over the top if you want to increase the stretch. And with both of those stretches, you can hold for about 15 to 20 seconds, do a few on each side, and just watch out for the increase in symptoms. You don't want to push it, especially in the first week or two after you've just sort of started to turn the corner and recover from the inflammation and spasm of the wry neck. So that's a little bit of generic flexibility advice, some things that you can do when you just start to get your neck moving after your initial episode of pain. If you've had this before, chances are you are not able to really see what's going on with your posture and the positioning of your body that is contributing to the strain on your neck and the recurrence of ongoing neck pain or the recurrence of your crick neck. That's what my expertise lies in. I would love to help you with that. I can see things about your body right from the outset because that's what I've been doing for over 20 years. I'm more than happy to help you out, and I can do it online, and I will put a link below this training for you to be able to access me for a free little consult, because that's what I love to do. I love to give you lots of little tips about implementing things that are specific to you. Generic training is great, but it may not be exactly what you need. So make sure you take advantage of that offer. If you've had pain before, if you've had a crick neck before, or ongoing pain, I'd love to chat to you about how you can best start to sort it out and get on a better journey to getting rid of that pain for good. That's covered off on our flexibility. Strength, the all-important strength. Now, I was talking a little bit before about improving your posture by taking the weight off your head off your neck, and that gets your core stability muscles of your neck starting to be involved. So if you want to then move to the next level of those exercises, once you've gotten used to bringing the weight of your head back over your shoulders and lifting up tall through your head and neck, making sure all the while that you're not increasing strain, increasing muscle tightness at the front, keep very relaxed at the front of your neck, you can then start to be in that tall, almost like a chicken on a spit, rotisserie type movement. You can then start to make that a little bit harder by going through your range of movement while you keep that tall neck unloaded. I want you to make sure that you do not have your chin up. Biggest mistake I see is people go to lift up and they actually raise their chin. Big no-no. You do not want your chin to lift up. So I would actually watch in the mirror for the first few times you do this to make sure that you're not lifting your chin. You want to be lifting off the base of your head and neck from there so that your chin and face stays forwards. We never want the chin up. It jams up the back of your neck and makes matters worse. So you must be tall from the base of your neck, relaxed at the front, and then practice turning. You can also practice going down to the sides, keeping that tall neck. And you can practice going forwards. Only when you're really good can you practice going backwards, because that does put extra strain on those joints and the disc that are possibly recovering. So backwards is a bit more of a tricky one. But even just practicing being in that tall neck position while you go for a walk, while you're preparing vegetables for the kids' lunches or the meals that night, practicing as you're looking down, being in that tall neck position rather than this, or as you're at your desk, making sure you're correcting your posture so that you're actually sitting in the tall neck position, lifting up from there while you're typing, and catch yourself every time you go into that craning neck forward position. That is what puts so much load on those joints in the middle of your neck and leads you towards the recurrence of the wry neck. So that's a little bit of exercise advice that will just get you started on the first few things you need to do in terms of strengthening up those neck muscles. But holy moly, that it is a massive journey in terms of beating that neck pain for good. There is a strict sort of little progression of exercises that you would really benefit from going through. And that's what I'm good at doing. I am good at seeing what you need and giving you the exact advice that you need to go step by step to improve your strength and your endurance in the right muscles, not just generically, but specifically for you. Everybody's situation is a little bit different. Everyone's starting from a different point in their journey to strengthen up and starting with a different amount of pain and different structural involvement. So we do go through that in the online program, and I give you lots of strength tips, and you have access to me to be able to ask advice on which ones are right for you. But if you've got lots of pain and you want some help with that right now and you don't have time to log in and get involved in the program, you can access me for a free little mini consult where we can start to nut those things out for you, and I can tap into exactly where you need to start on your strength journey and the things that you need to get going on to get you stronger in the right muscles to combat your pain. So you've got to keep on top of your flexibility, keep on top of your strength, and keep on top of your positioning to make sure that you beat your neck pain for good. If you need any more guidance with that, I'll make sure I pop a link below this training so that you can ask me some more questions or jump online and look at that program in a little bit more detail. I hope those tips and strategies have been helpful for you. We have covered a lot of information in this training today, and your next steps are as follows. Give me some feedback and advice. If you've got questions, ask away. But if you've had ongoing neck pain, or you've had recurring crick necks, or you really can't beat that upper back, neck and shoulder irritation or nagging, especially when you're at work and you've had it for a while, there are probably some things missing that need to be addressed, whether it's identifying which structures are involved, getting your positioning in your workstation set up right, addressing specific little postural issues and stiffness issues that might be specific to you and your body and how you hold it, and getting the right muscles switched on to help you get rid of that pain for good. So there's some links below. I'll pop in the link to my free little online consults. You can go into my calendar and book one of those free spots so I can give you some strategies you can take away straight away and give you some help to get you started in combating that pain and addressing it for good. If you can't find a time there, just email me because I can work around things. I just don't always have the same times available every week. So email me if you can't find a time. Otherwise, if you know you need an ergonomics assessment done for you and your workstation, you want help with that so you can take the strain off for good. If you want to know more about your posture and how you can work out what you need to do to address your deficiencies, and if you know you need some more exercise guidance, I have got an online program for you. That's the online program I've been talking about. It's called Workstation Wellness for Busy Desk Workers, and it gives you just the things you need to know that you can work through step by step, get everything sorted in order, some little health hacks that will be great for you and your family. So you can click on the program to find out more about that. If you want a little teaser of what's involved with it, I'll put in the link to my free offer. That's your 5 steps to combating pain and strain, improving your posture, and you're boosting your metabolism and health at your desk. So there's a few little links for next steps for you depending on where you're at and what you need. So be sure to let me know how you go with what we've gone through today. I know it was a lot, but I hope you've got a lot of information out of it, and I hope to hear from you soon. Bye for now.